Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video. That's right. As I teased in the last review, today also marks the anniversary of one of the most beloved films of all time, The Wizard of Oz. That's right. So I am re-reviewing The Wizard of Oz once again, and, since today marks its anniversary, yes, what is there to say about The Wizard of Oz? Well, as I said, it's one of the most beloved movies of all time. Definitely just part of film history, it's a masterpiece, and in the late 1930s, being one of those films that went into color, right next to, say, that came out the same year, with The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and, yeah, so, and, it would have been nice if this film did win Best Picture. I think it would have, totally deserved to win Best Picture, but, Gone with the Wind, hey, that's another great film in history, But anyways, so, of course, based off of the books, of course, by Frank L. Baum, and, yeah, of course, directed by Victor Fleming, and also George Kruger, if I'm saying the last name right, him and Mervyn LeRoy, they're both uncredited as directors, but Victor Fleming being the main director, of course. And yeah, Victor Fleming, he too had also, directed, also at the same time, had, directed Gone with the Wind. So anyways, so the story, and I think we all know the story by now, but still, it's still fun to read the story. So, the story. Young Dorothy Gale and her dog Toto are swept away by a tornado from their Kansas farm to the magical land of Oz and embark on a quest with 3 new friends to see the wizard, who can return her to her home and fulfill the others' wishes. So, as we all know, because, the way the movie opens, Toto and Dorothy running away from Miss Gulch, and, Dorothy trying to warn her aunt and an uncle, Auntie Anne, played by Clara Blandick, and Uncle Henry, played by Charlie Grapewine? I think I said that right, yeah. And, of course, the 3 guys that also work on the farm, I forget what they're supposed to be like, I guess maybe they're relatives or something? I'm not really sure, but, of course, Hunk, played by Ray Bolcher, and Hickory, played by Jack Haley, and Zeke, played by Burt Lahr, we all know who, the 3 actors, we all know who they would be playing, later in the films, and that's the purpose of, like, say, the story, but anyways, so of course, they really, I don't think, because for, that's just kind of unacceptable, Auntie Em and Uncle Henry, they're too busy to listen to Dorothy because of Miss Gulch, and, even, like, say, Hunk, Hickory, and Zeke kind of joking around of Miss Gulch, and, of course, Dorothy singing the most beloved song of the film, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. There's no denying that song, of course, is a beloved song, one of the best. Miss Gulch coming in, wanting to take Toto to the sheriff, I'm taking to the sheriff to make sure he's destroyed. And, even at one point, even Miss Gulch, threatening to, take away the farm and so on. God, Miss Gulch, you can clearly tell, a B word. Just even say Auntie Em kind of confronting Miss Gulch, for 20-something years, I've wanted to tell you, what I thought of you. Well, being a Christian woman, I can't say it. So, yeah, we get the idea, how Auntie Em really feels about Miss Gulch. And, of course, Toto does, of course, escape from Miss Gulch's basket and on her bike, and, of course, Dorothy fearing that maybe Miss Gulch will come back. Dorothy and Toto, they they run away, and they come face to face with Professor Marvel, played by Frank Morgan. And of course, we all know who Frank Morgan would be playing very later on in the film. But people should also know he has multiple roles in this, which of course I will mention, obviously. Professor Marvel, like, having Dorothy, like, see in a crystal ball and, seeing what's happening, and, like, something to do with Auntie Em and Dorothy kind of worrying, and she runs back, and the tornado about to come in, everybody gets in the shelter, except for Dorothy. She's too late. They can't even hear her from outside, because the tornado's so loud, and she's stuck in the house in the tornado, and, supposedly, like, she's probably dreaming about this, but, just everything that's flying in the sky, from an old lady in a rocking chair, two guys on a boat, and Miss Gulch, from Miss Gulch to the witch. Is it supposed to be the Wicked Witch of the East or the West? Probably say the West. I mean, if it was the East, I don't know. But of course, the house crashing, and it killed the Wicked Witch of the East. And we see Glinda, played by Billy Burke, the Munchkins, popping up, and, the long song number, during the Munchkin sequence, ding dong, the witch is dead, witch oh witch, the wicked witch. I read about this, that the Munchkins were dubbed, by Disney voice actors, and one of them, he should be credited, well, I don't know, the one with the lollipop, he always, apparently I read that he always felt that he for 60 years, he thought that was his voice, but some Wizard of Oz enthusiast, historian, that's right, historian, confirmed to him that, no, it's one of the Disney voice actors. So, anyways, the Wicked Witch coming in, one, of course, played by Margaret Hamilton, her famous dialogue, "Who killed my sister? Who killed the Wicked Witch of the East? Was it you?" And, "Well, my little pretty, I can cause accidents too." And the ruby slippers now come to Dorothy, and as we all know, we all should know, in the original book by Frank L. Baum, they were silver shoes, but because that this was one of the big films that was turned into color, MGM really wanted the shoes to pop, and of course they went with ruby slippers. So I got this, and especially for this review, not green screen, thank goodness. But anyways, hey, it's blue, so that's good. Of course, the Wicked Witch, like Glinda, like threatening the Wicked Witch of the West, in a calming way. "Be gone before someone drops a house on you too." And, "Very well, I'll bide my time, Just try to stay out of my way, just try. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too." I even, like, fun fact, Margaret Hamilton kind of got burned or something when, the elevator came down, like, because, the smoke rising, and right as she was coming down, the flames, and it kind of, like, got her face or something. Poor Margaret Hamilton, Well, even, like, say, Wicked, Idina Menzel kind of had the same problem as well. She got injured too, like, being lowered down from an elevator. So, hey, coincidentally, both two actresses who played the witch. So, and of course, Glinda, telling her to go find the Wizard of Oz in the Emerald City, and, to follow the Yellow Brick Road. Another famous song, "Follow the Yellow Brick Road, follow the Yellow Brick Road, you're off to see the wizard." That. And of course, that's where she, one by one, meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. The Scarecrow wants a brain, the Tin Man wants a heart, and the Cowardly Lion wants courage. The Scarecrow being played by Ray Bolcher, Jack Haley, the Tin Man, and Bert Lahr as the Cowardly Lion. God, they are so good as these characters, their song numbers are great too, of course. And also, like, up to when they're about to meet the Tin Man, like, they see apples and the talking trees, Candido, if I'm saying the last name right, one of the late legendary Disney voices, have that kind of voice, and so on. He's one of the trees. What do you think you're doing? How would you like to have someone pull something off of you? So, and of course, the Wicked Witch threatening, Dorothy, Scarecrow, and Tin Man. I'll use you for a beehive. Here, Scarecrow, want to play ball? And up to when they meet the Cowardly Lion, a funny introduction of the Cowardly Lion, put him up. And, of course, it turns out that the lion is a coward, so... And up to when, okay, they once again sing, we're off to see the wizard, and the Wicked Witch, poisons the poppies, like puppies will put them to sleep. Only Toto, Dorothy, and the lion fall asleep, except for Tin Man and Scarecrow. But at one point, Glinda does help by making it snow, and my mom loves this line that the Cowardly Lion says, "Unusual weather we're having." That's her favorite line. She always laughs at that. In fact, the Cowardly Lion has been one of her favorite characters. Who doesn't love the Cowardly Lion? Especially what Bert Lahr, sorry, there's no D at the end, what Bert Lahr brought to the Cowardly Lion. I'm telling you. And so, of course, they make their way to Emerald City. Frank Morgan, this is where Frank Morgan plays another character, being the doorman. Yeah. Who rang that bell? And of course, they explained, they're not supposed to ring the doorbell. They need to instead knock. Bell out of order. Please knock. Of course, they tell the doorman that, they're here to see the wizard. Glinda sent them. She has the ruby slippers. And another song number, that's how we laugh and sing and dance in the merry old land of Oz. Yeah, that. And the horse that changes color off screen. The witch giving a warning to Dorothy. Surrender, Dorothy. And Frank Morgan, Frank Morgan, he was the doorman, and he was the cabbie, the coachman. And he now plays the guard, right at the entrance of Oz. Orders are, nobody can see the great Oz, not nobody, not know how. And, they convince the guard, and, the guard will go to the Oz to announce them, and once again, another song number, this time from the Cowardly Lion. If I were king of the forest. That song number, I'm telling you, the Cowardly Lion, I'm telling you, he was definitely one of the funniest. With a woof, and a woof, and a growl, woof. So, and his facial expressions and so on just nailed it. Of course, they do meet Oz, the lion being so scared, and, and of course, Oz being this big green head. I am Oz, the great and powerful. I'm very curious. There had to be somebody that was playing the head of Oz, and the voice too. Somebody. I could never see it in the cast or anything like that. But if you know, hey, let me know in the comments section. Of course, Oz knows why they've come to him, He knows that Scarecrow wants a brain, Tin Man wants a heart, and Cowardly Lion, and, he knows. But he asks them to bring for them to bring him the witch's broomstick. And, of course, going to the witch's castle, I turn back if I were you. And Tin Man at one point doesn't believe in spooks. He gets lifted up in the sky, lands back down, and the Cowardly Lion just do believe in spooks. I do. Ha ha, you'll believe more than that when I'm through with you, and so on. The flying monkeys, yeah, because the flying monkeys, they go and capture them. In fact, the witch did mention this. Sent a little insect to take the fight, blah blah blah, and that was supposed to be. There was going to be a song, once again, another song number right in the middle of that, this was right before the Flying Monkeys came in, which being the Jitterbug. It basically was the most expensive song number / sequence to do, but then eventually it got cut. So, in fact, what would the Jitterbug have looked like? That's the thing. Well, Tom and Jerry and the Wizard of Oz, them returning to the Wizard of Oz, the sequel, they had the jitterbug, so apparently that's what the jitterbug looked like, this, like, hip jazz kind of bug. Okay. I don't know. I just felt like mentioning it, because it's true. It did appear, so... So, of course, the flying monkeys swooping down. The visual effects in this movie were fantastic, I think even to this day they still look amazing, like practical effects, and even when you look at the shot of the monkeys in the sky, it still looks amazing, And so, of course, they captured Dorothy and Toto, but in the book, they captured not only Dorothy and Toto, but they also captured the lion as well. But I think in this movie it works because, well, eventually Toto does escape from the castle, and Toto goes directly to the three main trio, Scarecrow, Lion, and Tin Man, and Toto leads them to the castle. And, yeah, even say the Wicked Witch with the giant hourglass of red sand, that's how long you have to live, or something. And Dorothy sees Auntie Em in the crystal ball, and the Wicked Witch, I'll give you Auntie Em, my pretty. And Dorothy was going to sing another rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That got cut as well. But, man, Judy Garland, she nailed it, just getting emotional and singing another rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Yeah. The Scarecrow, Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, they disguise themselves, as three of the witch's guards, because, well, at one point the guards tackle them, and the song that the guards sing, ho, ee, ho, yo, ho, so that. And, of course, they make their way in, and I did notice this, that there's a little bit of Night on Bald Mountain played. Didn't you listen closely to that? I did, so, that's pretty cool, it works. They're about to escape, but of course, the doors close on them, the witch, going so soon, and, of course, Scarecrow has an idea. He sees a rope attached to, a chandelier of candle lights, and uses Tin Man's axe, and that, launches down on a bunch of the guards, and, the witch, after throwing, the hourglass, seize them! Have you go this way, have you go that way. They got them in the corner, and the witch, bring around the rosy a pocket full of spinners, and the last go will see the first three a go before it. I think that's how she says it, yeah. And your mangy little dog, too. And, second time she tortures Scarecrow with fire, because, again, earlier in the film, here's Scarecrow, want to play ball? And in this time, sets her broomstick on fire. How about a little fire, Scarecrow? Practically just putting it on his arm. A burning! Dorothy uses, there happens to be a bucket of water sitting there, and Dorothy grabs it. You can hear the witch going, don't throw that water! What's with the face that Dorothy makes, as she's about to throw it, what's that? I'm not making fun of it or anything like that, I'm just curious. Even say in Tom and Jerry and the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy pulls the same face too. Hey, that's nice detail there for sure. But anyways, so of course a bit of water lands on the witch's face, and of course the infamous probably if not one of the best death villain scenes, where I'm melting. Yeah, what a great scene right there. A death villain scene, and even the guards, they're free from the witch's commands, Hail to Dorothy, the Wicked Witch is dead. And there was yet another deleted song number. And that being, of course, this time, hail, hail, the witch is dead, witch, oh witch, the Wicked Witch, that, this time centering on the Wicked Witch of the West. And that song would be playing, and even as they make their way to Emerald City and going in to see Oz. And I believe my eyes, why have you come back? And of course, they did what the wizard asked them to do. They brought the broomstick, even by melting her, and, they want what they want, but Oz, being a stubborn wizard or something like that, go away and come back tomorrow. And, even Tin Man had a point. You've had plenty of time already. And as the lion says, yeah, do not arouse the great and powerful Oz. I said come back tomorrow. Of course, and Toto, Toto's a dog, and he would sense the presence, goes over to a curtain and reveals Oz himself. And, of course, being played by Frank Morgan. So he's Oz, and, and as Dorothy says, you're a very bad man. No, my dear, I'm a very good man, just a very bad wizard. Facts. So, yeah, he seems to be, he seems to be a nice and good man, but as a wizard, he's bad, just bad at being a wizard. That makes sense, And of course, the wizard, he does give what, they wanted, the thing is, each of them, they always had it in them, Scarecrow was always smart, and he didn't really need a brain. And in fact, I forget what it was that the wizard gave him, like a piece of paper and so on, and him the Scarecrow reading off something, and yeah, he always was smart, and he did have a brain, and Tin Man, well, the wizard gives him like a heart watch or something, but Tin Man always had heart, he showed emotion and so on. Cowardly Lion, well, sure, he was scared at times, but you know what? He was brave. Even say when, him and Tin Man and Scarecrow, they went to save Dorothy. He always had courage. He was not afraid. And, the wizard gives him like a medal or something, yeah. And of course, finally, he helps Dorothy get back home because he was going to leave the land of Oz as well in a hot air balloon. But, in a ceremony, and, he puts Scarecrow in charge, being, the leader or something of the Emerald City, and Toto gets distracted by this cat, and it causes Dorothy to chase Toto, and, you could clearly see kind of like Tin Man kind of unwraps, untie the blimp, and the blimp goes away, goes in the air without Dorothy. I can't come back down. I don't know how to land this thing, as the wizard says. Goodbye, folks. And it seems as though that Dorothy's never going to get back home. But Glinda shows up and tells her that she can use the ruby slippers to get back home. And according to Glinda, she would have never known or figured that out, throughout that whole journey. So, yeah. And an emotional goodbye, Dorothy saying goodbye to Tin Man, the lion, and Scarecrow. And even, Toto, saying goodbye too, And Glinda telling her to click her heels 3 times? Yeah, 3 times. And think, and she has to think to herself, there's no place like home. And of course, we see that, apparently the house crashes again, and Dorothy is saying that as she's kind of, still asleep, and, everything's okay now. And there's Auntie Em, Uncle Henry, Zeke, Hunk, and Hickory, and Professor Marvel dropping by to see if she was okay. And Dorothy telling them that, Hunk, Zeke, and Hickory, and Professor Marvel, they were in her dream. And, if this was real or not, if she was actually there. Probably, yeah, she probably was, but, and, Judy Garland / Dorothy getting the last lines of the film, they're, Auntie Em, there's no place like home, and what a way to end the movie, and that's amazing, what a great ending to a masterpiece, a film masterpiece, I should say. The Wizard of Oz, what a beloved film this is, as I said, it's a timeless classic, one of the most beloved movies of all time. You know it, of course, and like before, I give this a 10 out of 10 for sure. And what about you guys? What are your fond memories of The Wizard of Oz? Growing up and watching this, what do you think of my review? Leave comments as always, and give this review a like as always. So yeah, so with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of The Wizard of Oz. Again, because this film is a timeless classic. The characters are great. The story, of course. Everything to this. So colorful and beautiful, I'm telling you. The songs, the music. What a masterpiece. And again, the 10 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of The Wizard of Oz. Once again, more reviews coming your way. They're gonna be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video/review. And stay tuned next week. The second to last review of August, where I'll be reviewing yet another beloved classic film celebrating its anniversary. Let's just say it has to do with, you know, singing in the rain? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Stay tuned for that. Once again, happy anniversary to the one and only Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home. Take care, and peace out.